first part is the E, I think that it talks about the emotional connect that as an evaluator we need to build with the speaker. Why so? Because when a speaker is delivering an evaluation on the stage, a speaker has to take care that he or she adds value to the speech and the speaker and the audience and everyone else that's listening to it. And that can only be done if you have empathetically understood what the speaker was trying to say and where the speaker is coming from. So emotions will play a very important role in the evaluation that you get to deliver. In order to have this in your evaluation speech, listen attentively to the speaker and try to understand the message that the speaker is trying to deliver. Try to understand the feelings or the connect that the speaker is trying to establish with the audience during the test speech. Try to understand what the speaker is trying to say and why. So that is very important. The second part is the value that we were talking about in the first segment as well, is the value that you need to add. Because unless and until you add some value to the speaker, there is no point of delivering an evaluation. So we all understand this, that when we have delivered a speech in our regular Toastmasters meeting or a regular Toastmasters session, we expect that the evaluator will come back and come up with recommendations and commendations that adds value to our speech so that we can take it away, come back better. Even when it is a contest speech, we expect people to give us feedback so that we improve on that speech and we understand that, okay, these are the things which are already very good with me and I am going to take this and keep this in my speech and work on the other things so that I win the next level. So this value has to be added by the evaluation that you need to deliver. And in order to add value, you also need to be very attentive, because you have to understand the small elements which are present in the speech, the story within a story, the segments, the transitions, the body language, voice modulation, the stage choreography, appropriate movements, appropriate usage of hand gestures and words, whether it was effective or not. All this kind of value you can add and recommend that, okay, this was missing and this could have been done in this way. The third part would be at where you are evaluating. So sometimes we evaluate at sessions and sometimes we evaluate at contests. So when we're evaluating in a session, the setup or the evaluation has to be a little bit different from what we are going to do in a contest setup. We're going to talk about that in the coming slides. And it is always about I as an evaluator. So when I am delivering an evaluation speech, I have to ensure that I am delivering this speech from my perspective, because it is my evaluation. So if I go there and I say that the audience might have felt this, that this was missing, you are not there to as the mouthpiece or the speaker on behalf of the audience. You are there to talk on behalf of yourself only. And these are your opinion. So make it a first person speech. That is, when I was there, I saw your speech and I felt that it was very connecting. When you talked about the emotional episode, the conversation between you and your parents, it touched me and I could realize it. Or when you're giving recommendations, you say, when I was sitting there, I saw that you were moving about on the stage to cover the entire of the stage so that you reach to different parts of the audience. However, I feel that you only change positions when you change a plot in your speech. For example, from moving to scene 1 to scene 2, where you are talking about your house and your office, you move from one place to the other. Unnecessary movements can be a source of distraction. So this is the way where we go in and we present our evaluations from the first person perspective. And on, what are we evaluating on? So in a club event or in a session, regular evaluation session, the ons will again be different from what we are going to evaluate on in a contest. So since this is more about the contest bit, I would say in a contest, the evaluation, the standard recommended practice for an evaluation contest is commendation, recommendation, commendation. That's what we all are told to be following in the clubs as well. So there are two things to it in a contest that you need to mandatorily add. One is the summary at the bottom and the opening at the front. I would also say add something called a takeaway that is going to be there just before the summary or just after the summary before you end your speech, right? So it has to be an opening, it has to be a commendation, then the recommendations, then the commendations, then the summarizing and the takeaway all together. So it's up to you whether you want to give the takeaway first and then the summary, or the summary first or the takeaway. But in case you are giving the takeaway later, ensure that it seems to be a part of the summary and not some extra sentence or add on after the summary, because then your structure gets disturbed. So I would say if you are a beginner, then go with the flow wherein you come to the takeaway first and then the summary. And if you are an expert, you can maybe experiment it a bit and make it sound different to the audience, wherein you come with the summary and the last part of the summary, merges smoothly, transitions into the takeaway that you're going to give, and you put it forward to the speaker. So evaluation breakup is like this, as per me. So we're going to talk about the evaluation breakup today. We're going to talk about during regular meetings, the differences with the contests and during the contests, and what is the judge's expectation as per the ballot when you are delivering an evaluation. So as we were talking, evaluation is about emotions and valuations. So we are never happy when we do not get what we deserve. And the speaker is just like us. So the speaker will also be not happy when he or she doesn't get what he or she deserves after the speech. That is a proper recommendation or proper commendations. Evaluation is not the place wherein we go out there and vent out our grudge against a person. Evaluation is not the place where we go out there and vent out our grudge against the idea which the person was trying to say. It is about finding out things that are good in the speech, that are not so good in the speech and could be worked upon, and what are also good about the speaker and things that the speaker can work upon. Not personal comments though, but about the speaker, I would say that in the district finals, when the test speaker was speaking, the speaker forgot to remove the iCard from the, from his neck. So as a result of which, it could have been distracting to a few of the audience members and to me as well. So that was feedback that I passed on to the speaker during the recommendation segment, not as a separate point, because this is too weak a point to fetch a lot of marks. We'll talk about that in the next segments as well, but as a part of the stage movement and appropriate body language with the voice. So because wherein you're talking, your body should be in sync, excuse me, your body should be in sync with the voice and all those things. So you're giving examples where it went right, where it went wrong. Just before you move on to the next point, I recommended that you would have also probably moved the tag away because it was swinging and causing a sense of distraction in the audience, which was unnecessary in the speech. So therein, I'm giving a personal recommendation towards personal to the speaker, but not targeted as a personal attack or a personal appreciation to the speaker. So that there is a fine line there, so that we have to mutual feelings will help you see through. So that is something that you need to develop and to understand when the speaker is speaking. The connect has to be there. So what if the question might rise? What if the speaker is delivering a speech which is not at all connecting with me? What do I do on that? So in that case, try to understand is delivering like this, and you can use that as a point of recommendation, that you understand and you empathize with the speaker that okay, this thing went wrong, and as a result of which the speaker was not able to connect well with the audience. If that source can be modified or that source can be tweaked a little bit, that will help the speaker to connect more with the audience. For example, lack of examples, maybe for lack of personal stories,
lack of generic personal stories. So I can come about and talk about specific things I do regularly at my home when I get up from bed. And that might be different from what you do at your place. So I have to come up with I can recommend the speaker, the guest speaker, that I have to you can use generic stories that everyone does. For example, everyone brushes their teeth after getting up from sleep. So this is just a very basic example that I'm trying to give. So that is something generic. And if I get up from bed and I sit there on my bed for 2 minutes, that is something specific that I do. I might not be connecting with a specific example, but with a generic example. So if I connect where the thing is going wrong, that is the emotion of the behind the speaker, I can tell that, okay, this is where the things went wrong, and this is how the things are going to go better. Now, one thing we need to remember in this part is when we're being emotional or when we're trying to add value, sometimes we get carried away and we go to the stage, take it too friendly and or take it too aggressively and say that you did this thing wrong and you should have done this thing like this. So that is not how an evaluation works. So the basic points in an evaluation talks about ensuring that the speaker comes back to the stage in order to deliver a speech again in a better way. So you have to ensure that you motivate the speaker, and so that the speaker at the end of the day, at the end of your evaluation, feels that yes, I can do it better next time. So that is something that you need to take care. For example, don't use very negative words like bad, worse, this was not going to work. So very strong adjectives, I would say, do not use in your evaluation speech. Like you might have noticed when I was talking about the CRC approach, I said things that were good in the speech and things that were not that good or could have been walked upon in the speech, not things that were bad in the speech. So there's nothing bad in the speech. Try to avoid direct words which are negative in nature, which might impact the speaker's confidence. So that is one aspect of the emotion of the speaker that you need to feel or imbibe and take care with you as you go forward during the evaluation, and ensure that the speaker feels motivated at the end of the evaluation. Now we're going to talk about the different aspects of an evaluation. The first point is the objectives. So this comes mainly during the club level or club session evaluations that we do in our regular meetings, not in a contest. So this is the basic difference that between an evaluation at a contest and evaluation at a regular meeting or regular session. So the objectives that we talk about here are understand, clarify, and conform, right? So understand the objectives in a regular Toastmasters meeting about the speech, confirm with the speaker, confirm with the GE, confirm with the Toastmasters manual that, okay, this is how the objective is, and this is where I am going to evaluate you as a speaker on this speech. So I hope you take care of these points before the session and clarify with them on the rules on this with the speaker, and then you deliver your speech or your evaluation based on these objectives laid down by the Toastmasters International guidelines. In case you want to add something else on your own, for example, in the traditional track, every speech has a specific wherein they highlight specific things. For example, a speech which talks about the CC7 talks about finding out or research your topic. So it talks only about research your topic. But that does not necessarily mean that as an evaluator, when you are going out there, you will recommend or commend only based on the points wherein how good the topic was researched. Since it is CC7, generally most of us tend to talk about CC1 to 6 objectives as well. So when you're setting the guidelines at the beginning of the session and telling these are the objectives, ensure that the audience is aware that, okay, you as an evaluator is going to talk about these things as well, and also make sure that the speaker understands before the session that, okay, that this evaluator, she or he, would be talking about these things as well, right? So this is the basic difference between a session evaluation and a contest evaluation. The rest of the things are common. So I'm going to talk at it mostly from the contest point of view. And it's going to be similar with what we do at the evaluations during a club meeting. Recommendations come first. Why? Because recommendation has the most amount of weightage on a judge's ballot in a speech evaluation contest. What are recommendations? Recommendations are things that the speaker did not do right, or things that could have been better. Parts of recommendations would comply of where the thing could have been better, what was not done up to the mark, and how it could have been better. Right? So where, when, and how. Be specific in your recommendations. Otherwise, most of the times, many of the times, not most of the times, many of the times, people tend to give generic recommendations. And when we are putting forward generic recommendations, it will be difficult for us to, it will be difficult for the speaker, difficult for the person there to try to identify, okay, what exactly do I need to improve on, and what exactly do I need to work upon in the speech. And even the judges, when they're marking you or putting marks on the ballot for you, it will be difficult for them to ensure that how do I give marks. So if one evaluator comes in and gives a very specific recommendation, wherein he or she talks about exact things, what went wrong, where they went wrong, and steps on how it can be improved, and the other guy comes in and says that, okay, this was not good in your speech. Say I come in and say that the voice modulation was not very good in the speech, and the voice modulation needs to improve. And then Toastmaster Rani comes in and says that in your speech, when you were talking about the little child, the voice in the little child and the voice in which you were narrating your experiences were in sync with each other, and they were same. So I would say that when you're talking about the little child, make him sound like the child and make his voice a little soft and a little wobbly, so that we can understand that little boy is speaking. And when you're talking about you talk about in your own voice. This would come by separating the characters during the practice and recording your voice and playing it over, so that you listen to the difference in the voice and you understand that this is going right or this is going wrong, and you can work with the mentors as well. So this is a very specific recommendation which covers where it went wrong, what went wrong, and how it can be fixed. Also, the perfect way would be to add examples in the speech, what the little boy was speaking, sentences or words, and what the normal man was speaking, sentences or words, right? So all of this together would comply of a perfect recommendation set, and this would make sure that the judges are going to give you better marks in the recommendation segment. And remember, recommendation consists of the most part in the speech. So it is very important and very essential that you take care of these things, correctly and properly. I'm sure all of you are aware of this as well. Just so that you remember, I'm brushing these up. The second part is the commendations. Now, commendations do not find a specific segment or specific dedicated marking segment in the ballot. If you see the ballot, you will never see that there is a segment which talks about the positives of the speech or the commendations that the speaker needs to get. So, is it very important to talk about commendations? Yes, it is. Not just because it is there as in the CRC approach twice. It is very important because the speaker needs to feel important, and the speaker needs to feel, inspired to come back and practice and go about it. So Toastmasters International and any regular stage wherein people speak or regular practice that we do at our office, we always feel that it is very good when a leader or a speaker or our manager, someone comes and says that you've done a good job. It's very satisfying and gratifying, right? So when the speaker is coming there on the stage, we need to make sure that the speaker goes away with a similar kind of a feeling and don't get bogged down. Now, from the perspective of the ballot in a contest, because it's about the contestant who is speaking, we are here to listen to it from the contestant's point of view. Commendations are not there in the ballot specifically written, but there are words like motivate, and there were words like how you delivered, there are words like analytical ability all through the judge's ballot. If I take away the 30% marks of the recommendations and the 15% marks of the of the summary, then the remaining 55% marks has commendation hidden in it. When you're giving out a commendation, it can be a little shorter than the recommendation, because what you need to fix and how you need to fix section goes away from the recommendation bit, because it's already good. So the speaker knows that what the speaker needs to do. So just say that in your speech, same example I'm giving. So in your speech, when you were talking about little boy and and your grown-up self, you were making voices that were distinct in nature. We could understand from the voice of the little boy when you were making words like, use now in the quote, I want candy, I want something to play with. And when you were talking about yourself, when you said that, yes, you will get the candy when you grow up. So your voices were very distinct. So this is a commendation that you are giving. So the speaker knows what to do, where it went right, and everything is coming up. So you don't need to specify. This ensures that the judge understands that you have analytical ability. You have identified from within the speech what went right and where it went right. Number one. The analytical ability also is covered when you have talked about specific recommendations, right? Because you are analyzing the speech and finding it out, and even finding it out and giving them recommendations that add more, specific recommendations that adds more to the analytical ability in the segment. Now there is a segment wherein how the evaluation was delivered is talked about in the ballot, right? So whether it was motivating or whether it was demotivating. So when you're giving in recommendations along with commendations, it ensures that the speaker is feeling a little bit good. That yes, there were segments or parts in the speech which were good. So you have that luxury as well. So that adds on to the analytical ability segment and wow, and the way the speech is delivered segment. So 55% marks, I would say it's 20-30% of the 55% marks. So basically 15 to 20 marks on the 100 marks ballot goes to commendations. So you need to cover commendations. So the ideal match would be 3 and 3. That is 3 commendations, 3 recommendations. But I generally practice 4 plus 4 because I can speak a little faster. So if it depends on the voice rate that you're going to do, speech rate that you can practice, or the speech rate that you can actually exercise on the day of the contest. It's up to you, but ensure that when you're speaking faster, the words should be specific, clear, and understandable by everyone in the audience, so that they don't get lost out in the thoughts, or they don't miss words, they don't get muffled up in the ear. So practice beforehand that if you want to speak fast and add more points to your speech. So I generally go with 4 plus 4, and in the recommendation bit, I try to add in sub points like I talked about the tag that the speaker was wearing. So little sub points here and there, so that the number comes up to around 4.5 or sometimes 2 halves here and there. So that helps in distinguishing them us from the rest of these contestants. But it can be tricky. Make sure that you are on time, and in case you're speaking very fast, ensure that about the value addition that the speech is going to give us. So like I was talking that the takeaway that it gave to you, that is the message in the speech. So this acts in a dual way. This acts as a commendation that you are giving to the speaker as well in the second CRC, and also the takeaway that leaves the speaker with an impression that it has added value to the speech. So something that the speaker has so if the speech had a call for action, talk about the call for action that was there, the message that has inspired you. If the speaker was being very humorous, talk about the message that in a funny way that was derived, that was stated. Sometimes it is very difficult for a speech, to find out messages in a speech which do not have. So in those cases, that will come in the recommendation that there was no message. So we cannot talk about the value addition. But maybe the value addition could be if the speaker was not very prepared. So generally, it will not happen in a evaluation contest that the speech does not have a message or something. So it is not going to happen like that. But when a speaker is talking about a speech which does not have any value addition or value message, then skip this part. But in a contest, this will not happen. So be prepared to add some, because it is advised that the test speaker gives the speech just balanced, so it will have something, some takeaway for you. So if it is not there, then you have to come up with different recommendations or recommendations based on that. So otherwise, it will be there in 90% of the times. Motivate in the end and call for the speaker to come back on the stage and speak again after the summary. That is, so once the summary is there, you have talked about what were good in the speech, what were the things that needs to improve on, and you can add a line or two saying that, okay, if you add these things in your already developed or already good speech, I'm sure that you can come back here and you can, shine and make us, all of us, inspired and enthusiastic again about the speech. I'm looking forward to have you back. Something like this. Something that is there in the mind of the speaker that, okay, I need to come back, because this goes into the segment of how the evaluation was developed or how the evaluation was delivered. That segment has marks for this section. The last part of an evaluation would be if would be to stand out. Why this is important is, in a club level contest or in a district level contest, these two contests can have, will have large number of participants, because in an evaluation contest in a club level, any paid member can contest, and in an evaluation contest in district level, you will have one member from each of the divisions, which is 12 to 13. Excuse me. So as a result of which, you need to make sure that you stand out. So I had once participated in a club level contest at my club, wherein there were 19 people, 19 contestants. It is very, and this time at the district finals, we had 12 contestants. So if you are the 12th speaker, if you are even the first speaker, it doesn't matter. What matters is, at the end of the 12 speeches or 19 speeches, the judge needs to remember that these three people are excellent. The judge might have given you a lot of marks, right? And then after 12 or 19 speeches, it might happen that you got 80 and the other guy also got 80 on the judge's ballot. Now the judge has to choose, because he or she cannot mark two people first, two people second, like that. So as a result of which, the judge will now have to decide. And if you have stood out, made an impression such that the speaker or the judge and the audience remembers your evaluation, after this happens for all the contests, you have to stand out and make a different mark, and so that people remember the takeaway from your evaluation, the takeaway from your speech at the end of the session, how you made a differentiation, how you stood out. At the end of all the contestants' speech, then you have a high chance of coming in the top three. How do I make it? How do I stand out from the rest of the people? There are a few ways. One would be to use a recommendation that the other people do not do. For example, I come up with, and also you can use themes and revolving statements, catchwords in your speech that you are looping around. Something we do in international speech as well, to be used in your evaluation speech. So in the evaluation contest speech this year, what were the things I did? I created an acronym which revolved around the beat. So that was something that stood with the audience, stayed with the audience and the judges. So the same acronym was looped for commendation, and the same acronym was used for recommendation. The word was beat. So I gave one positive with BEAT each, one recommendations with BEAT each. That was there. Secondly, I tried to come up with a recommendation which would be unique. For example, the last recommendation T, I was talking about technique. On the district finals, I could talk about the speaker was talking about an incident. So for those of you who have not heard that speech there, so the speaker was talking about an incident where the speaker was supposed to, there was a friend in the speaker's life whose life got shattered and everything broke around because people were bullying that person and no one was trying to understand the problems and concerns in his life. And then everything went haywire and crazy in his life. And then these friends, set of friends, realized their mistake and supported and grew them up, and their life grew all together into a fine looking, structure in a structured way. So I recommended usage of props there, like a house of cards beautifully placed that was blown away by a gust of air. That was the prop symbolizing the problems. And then when they were trying to make amends, pick up the cards and build it up again like a house of cards. So usage of prop. This can be one way of recommending on the usage of props. And I said that this can be one way of how make sure that the speech stays with us for a longer time. So I use beats as an acronym. I use recommendation that was there in a different way. Another thing that I did at I don't remember at the area or the division level, I think at the division level last year, was usage of a recommendation where I used the pauses that were being delivered by the speaker and represented them in a graphical format. So now I have to make sure I don't have props on the stage to draw a graph. So I have to make sure that people understand what I'm trying to say. So I did instead and said that the pauses in your speech were like sounds which were repeating in nature, but sounded like. So I gave a sentence wherein the speaker was saying, say the sun rises in the east, if that was used in the speech. Of course, take examples from the speech. And I would say that the sun rises in the east. And then the second sentence was, the sun sets in the west. So if this was how the speaker was saying, I said had pauses which represented a pattern like this, for example, and it sounded like la 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 la. If we use the pauses in a better way and say la 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 la, then it sounds better like in music. For example, the sun rises in the east, the sun sets in the west. So usage of pauses was there. A lot of evaluators will talk on usage of pauses, but the way you deliver that in your speech, like you by using notes, by using examples of graphs, and making sure that the speaker or the audience and the judges understand that strikes that okay, this one was different, this stood out. So same thing, different way. The delivery that you're doing, although there is no marks on delivery on paper, but it helps. The how the evaluation was delivered, and to differentiate between two equally good evaluations. The certain things will help you out. So now we're going to talk about the ballots that is there in front of the judges when they mark the speaker or the contestant in an evaluation contest. The first segment is the analytical ability. So it has to be clear and it has to be focused. This is 40%. Although I do not although this has the largest percentage of marks, I do not consider it as the biggest section because it has parts from both the theme that you're using, the crux of your speech, the commendations, the recommendations. There are a lot of parts to it in the analytical ability. So if you're doing something right somewhere, you start getting marks in this segment. That okay, this guy could dig out things that were good, dig out things that were bad, and work on these features, work on those things, and ensure that things were working and things were not. So this goes to the analytical ability. The second part is the largest segment, according to me, although it has 10% less marks, is recommendations. Because if you are not giving recommendations which are specific, positive, and helpful, you do not get marks in this segment. So this 30% marks has to be there, and it will be helpful only if you can give the specific, positive, and helpful recommendations in the way we talk about during the course of these speeches. The technique should be sympathetic, sensitive, and motivational. That is, what were the takeaways? Inspire the speaker, ensure that the speaker understands that and the mistakes, but not get demotivated or demoralized, and feels inspired to get back to the stage, deliver yet another speech. The way you constructed your speech made it stood out from the rest of the evaluations, and all these things will come into technique. And the last part is submission. So submission should be concise and it should be encouraging. That is, you motivate the speaker at the end with the takeaway value from the speech, and you say that okay, this is something that you need to practice in your life, and I'm going to go down there, and you inspired me so much that I'm going to practice something like that. I'm going to work on this. I added value to my life. I was looking for an answer, and this speech is what ensured that I get that answer, and all these things will be coming out in the encouraging segment. the concise bit has to be like the positives that the speaker delivered during the speech, and then the recommendation. So in your speech, for example, if you say a sample summary, I would say in your speech you already had excellent voice modulation, stage choreography, the usage of pauses and gestures, with a little touch up on the recommendations, that is usage of appropriate props, usage of proper techniques, usage of syncing of the body language with the voice, and a little more of audience interaction will take the speech to even better height. And then you say that in your speech you talked about that how every day the sun rises and then it sets again. And I realized that in my life, when things go wrong and things are going downhill, I should not feel disheartened. And I'm going to go back to my home and remember that when the sun sets today, tomorrow it will rise. Thank you for inspiring me with such a lovely piece. You are a shining sun in my life. And I'm sure that you will be back on stage to ensure that your light imparts more such knowledge to all of us in future. And you give it over. So it's like giving up the summary, then you give then you give a positive, inspiring conclusion and hand it over to the contest master. So that is about from the ballot perspective. So if you have any questions and answers, questions you want to add in some point, something that you want to share, as your time. So I can also answer them as your questions if you have any doubts. Hello.
Okay, if we don't have immediate questions, what I would do is I will share a recorded speech from a club. And Kaushik, if you
Mm-hmm.
could evaluate that and time up yourself, that would be great. Then that would be a demonstration for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, in
Okay.
case if you feel that you have any further questions laterwards or afterwards in the day, you can always reach out to Rani or me directly, and we can take this forward.
I have a question.
Yes, Devesh.
Uh, yeah. So I just wanted to know, like, how do you listen as an audience, or rather, how do you listen to a speech uh, while being an evaluator? Because it is possible that you are, focusing on every word, every act so deeply. As an evaluator, is it possible that you may not be able to grab the essence of the speech? Like the focus is on evaluating and not absorbing the message. I mean, how do we make the balance between the two?
Correct. So what happens is, I would say what I do. So I have in my mind that these are the aspects wherein I'm going to comment on. Say body language, voice modulation, body modulation, that is usage of like relevant movements or body language with relevance to the content or the voice, stage choreography, the message, the call for action, that is what was the action call or the message that was given in the speech, and was it clear that how to achieve that message was there or not, right? So then there are segments like usage of props, add value add, pauses, usage of pauses, catchwords or loop words, whether they were used or not in a speech, structure was there or not, the transition was proper or not, was it appropriate, that comes in the same segment. So these things that are present in an ISC ballot, more or less, is what I write down on my piece of paper that is given to me. So once the speaker starts speaking, so and this will come up to 8-10 points, but you do not go out there and you cannot talk on 10 points, you'll get disqualified. So what I do is I choose out 4 important points, 4 positives, 4 negatives, and when something good happens in the speech, I note it down against that point, right? Something that is not that good in that speech, I note it down in the I note it down in that point. So once I reach 4 positives, I stop writing down the positives. Once I reach 4 negatives, I stop writing down the negatives, unless and until something happens which is glaringly wrong or which is extraordinarily great, that needs to be highlighted. So then I note it down and put in one of the points there as a sub point and put it a club together. So otherwise, when I reach the fourth threshold, so I have all the points noted down that I'm going to evaluate the speech on these parameters. That are the objectives for me, although there is no objective in the speech set by the TI or the contest master for a contest. But these are the objectives for me on which I'm going to evaluate. And when 4 of the pluses are filled, I stop there noting the pluses. When 4 minuses are filled, I stop there noting the minuses. And then when something great happens, I note it. Otherwise, something like grossly wrong happens, that I note. And that's about it. And in the time that I get, the 5 minutes of time after the speech has been delivered, there I go to the other back half of the page and note down that these are the positives I'm going to talk about, these are the negatives I'm going to talk about. So I already have those in my mind and I've written it twice, so it stays with me. And then by the time I come to the stage, I try to form it up in a structure and see that okay, this is the flow is not broken, because it is very important to be smooth as well while we are delivering this. I hope that helps.
Hi Kaushik, is there any particular format we can adopt while taking the notes during the meeting? This is Bhanu from Gurgaon.
Hi Bhanu. Any particular format during the like you were saying in a contest or in a meeting?
Yeah, contest from like when the speaker is speaking. So some people say that you divide the paper in 3 halves. So you write like points related to commendation, or maybe you put a table of all, put the parameters and then take notes against them. So how to capture all this important information in a concise and legible way?
Right. So yes, most people divide the paper into 2 halves and write the positives and the negatives on 2 sides. Most people few people make it 3, wherein they write in all the points and then divide it in one positive segment and one negative segment in the other half. What I do is, when I say that I note down the points, I note down the points on the top of the paper. That these are the 8 or 10 points that I'm going to evaluate on. Now there are 2 segments. I draw a line from between, give a plus on the left, give a minus on the right, or it doesn't matter, give a minus on the left, plus on the right. And then when one of the things that occurs to me satisfies one of the objectives that I've written at the top and it goes to the plus, I write down one example there. What I write down is where things went right. If it is a negative, the specific example and what needs to be done to fix it. Even if I do not write what needs to be done to fix it at that point of time, it is okay, because I have 5 minutes of time after that wherein I understand that okay, I can talk about what needs to be done because that is my input. But if I do not write down the exact example where things went wrong, or where things went right, so words and sentences that the speaker used, I cannot make it up on my own. So I note down those lines there at the plus segment or the minus segment. Plus 4 points, once 4 on the right, 4 on the left. And then I move on to the next page in the 5 minutes and then freshen them up and put them in the sequence in which I want to speak, like prioritizing them as per importance. First, the most important, second, that way, second, third, fourth. And then again, first, second, third, fourth for the recommendations. So that if necessary, I can strike out one based on the timing facts. And I generally deliver theme-based evaluations. So I try to choose one theme which is relevant to the speaker's speech that the speaker is trying to deliver. Because if the speaker is talking about death, I cannot come up with a theme that suits a party. If the speaker is talking about happy-go-lucky party ways, I cannot talk about a theme which goes on death. So I have 2 to 3 themes in my mind, which mostly 2 or 3, not more than that, not possible to remember for me. So 2 to 3 themes in my mind, which are generic in nature. So the one I used as a district finals was beat, like beat of music, that your speech was like a fresh, added a fresh lease to my life, and the beats in it were very strong and the positives. And if you add work on little more on the beats, it will be even more inspiring, like the negatives and the recommendations that is there. So the positives and the recommendations were formed in form of a beat, and it was a musical theme that was there. In one of the levels, I had used one life-based theme wherein I was talking about your speech was like life, something like that. So there, I've used themes like journey. I've heard people talk about music. I have seen recordings on YouTube where people have talked even about parts of a sari and compare the speech with how beautifully it synced up with the parts of a sari and ornaments and stuff. So it's up to you how you want to do that. And there have been champion evaluators who have not at all gone with the theme and just followed the traditional CRC approach with the opening and the summary at the two ends, which are specific and encouraging.
Thank you, Kaushik. We have a question from Bandana. She asks how important it is to be animated and use body gestures on the stage. Does it need to be loud or it can be subtle?
I would say keep it subtle because evaluation speech is not a speech. It's evaluation that you're delivering, so it's kind of formal. So be subtle, be specific to the needs of the speech. But if you're trying to say that, okay, your body modulation needs to be like this, in that way, if you're giving an example, do that. That's fine for maybe 5-10 seconds. But otherwise, be like a formal presentation where you be free, be smooth, but don't jump around, I would say, because it's not a speech that you want to do that. Sometimes evaluators come to the stage and say, if I were you, I would have given the speech like this, and then give the entire speech in his or her way. That is not what is expected. What is expected is that you give specific positive recommendations.
Okay.
Because on the ballot, if you see, there is no marks for physical and volume like we have in the speech contest ballots.
All right. I hope that answers Vandana. If we don't have any more questions or if we can take a pause, I would like to start the test speech. It's fine with you, Kaushik? I'll go ahead then. Okay. And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. I'm going to play. Just let me know if you cannot listen to the audio. Then I will try to reshare again. Else we can just go ahead with it.
The audio is not coming through.
Is the audio not audible going around for anyone?
Yeah, it's breaking. So maybe you can share the link on that and we can watch in a separate window.
All right. But I would continue to play this so that I know an estimate time after which we can start the evaluation. And I would request everyone to just click on the link and watch it.
is so much that the relationship can no longer take the burden, ceases to be a pleasure, trembles, and finally falls down and breaks. We are so engrossed and blinded by that one kind of love, that one relationship, that we fail to see or acknowledge the other kinds that surround us, the ones that we often take for granted. Have you ever realized or wondered how the relationship that you have with your family, with your friends, have survived without much effort being put to it? We are secured in those relationships. Have you ever told your parents or your sibling that, hey, you treat me properly, you give me the time I demand for, else I'll go and find some other mom, some other dad, or some other sibling? No, right? We know that they are irreplaceable. We do not question or doubt the relationship. We do not fear all the time of the other one in the relationship of leaving us.
Rani,
We
if you
know
can
that
mute the
we will
screen
be
share
there
video.
no matter what.
Yes, please go ahead.
Toastmaster Upasana, what a speech. Your speech
had a sense of life, and it talked about life. In your speech, when you talked about alpha lessons about positivity and self growth, how things went wrong in your life, and how you gathered yourself up and moved forward. It talked about I for interesting voice modulations. You sang on stage, you made sounds like la 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 la, and you interacted with the audience by asking questions, and those questions felt like questions directly thrown at me. It was connecting. It had F of fun. You smiled all along, sang songs, talked about love, and your energy was enigmatic. It connected with the audience and kept us at the edge of our seats and made sure that we wanted to know what is coming up next in your speech. Your speech had E for engagement questions. You asked questions, interactive questions with the audience, and you asked questions about family, involving siblings, involving different kinds of love, that we all were tangible forms to all of us, and we could understand that yes, this is something that has happened to me, that is something which has happened to the person sitting next to me, and every one of us could feel each other, and those questions drove us and kept us hooked to your speech. Now, how can we take this already beautiful speech full of life and make them even better? By probably adding a little bit of beat of life to it. I would say use B for build up. You talked about personal stories in your speech wherein your love life was broken and then you gathered all the broken pieces and moved forward. I would recommend that you use this story at the beginning of the speech and create suspense on how it was going fine, rosy, all uphill, and suddenly things crash and it shatters all around. And then you ask those questions to the audience, involving them, and then you say how you again managed to fight back, gather all the pieces, and bring back your life back on track. E for enactment. I would say that you were moving about on the stage, covered the entire stage, but it was too brisk and at times could have been distracting to some people in the audience. So divide the stage into three parts. Use the center position for the introduction or the questions that you ask to the audience. One part of the stage when you talk about different kinds of love and you interact with the audience about them. The other part about the personal story where you were shattered. And then when you were going back up, you move over to the second part of the stage again. You come back and then to this front center position to drive home the message and end your speech. You talked about A for action. You called the audience to embrace the broken pieces of life and love in your speech, and how we should work on our love life, and how we should not give up when things go wrong and down and things are broken. But I would say add some stories about how you fixed it and how I can take away from your speech about the steps that I need to incorporate in my life and ensure that I can do it as well so that I can respond to your call of action better. And T for technique, I would say use a prop, maybe a balloon shaped heart symbolizing your heart, filled in with little sparkly pieces or small little objects that are close to you, and then burst it, pop it at the center of the stage when you're talking that your heart broke and the things scattered around. And then as you pick them up in your speech, you pick those objects up as well, put it back into another balloon and blow it and make it whole again. Overall, I would say it was an excellent speech which had life lessons, interesting voice modulation, fun, engagement, interactive interactions with the audience, a little bit of work on the build up, the enactment, the steps on how the action can be made, and the technique of usage of props. And this speech can be taken to even greater, bigger heights. As I go back to the stage, I would remember with me that when my life falls apart and when something in my life doesn't go wrong and I feel broken, my heart taken into pieces, not to give up, but look at those pieces and remember, now I have more reasons to live. Now I have reasons to gather them up and make my life whole again. Thank you, Upasana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kaushik. I'm sure Upasana just found her life beat. And since we have Upasana on call, Upasana, would you like to acknowledge or say something from your side?
Absolutely, Rani. Thank you, Kaushik, for evaluating my speech. I've taken the important points and I'll definitely like to improve upon it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rani. Thank you, Basna. Thank you, everyone, for
Yeah.
having me over. It was
Yeah.
nice talking to all of you.
Yes, it was a wonderful session. And apart from the techniques of evaluation, how to evaluate effectively and motivate the speaker on stage each time, I'm sure everybody is now aware Kaushik has a pre-approved loan from Bajaj Finance, and there is a group called Pagalpanti Zaruri Hai. So we get beautiful personality insights into Kaushik now. And so that shows the other side of the serious evaluator. And I hope everybody found this very enriching and educational. And yet again, Toastmasters, if you are giving your Saturday and a Sunday for a workshop, you are inspiring at least one person, and that would be me, who would